Hello students. So in this video lecture we will be talking about a very important topic of the zoology, and that is about the human heart. So in the first part we will be first talking about the chambers that are present and the walls that are present that divides the chambers in the human heart. So as you can see on your screen, the model includes the cross section of the human heart. So on the frontal side the chambers are being shown, and on the backward side you can see the blood vessels are being shown. All right, so we will first deal with the description part, and then we will be doing the labeling sections in the model itself. So let's start with the labeling part. Now we can just make this model into a static one first, and this move it here. All right, so when we talk about human heart, then it is made of 4 chambers. So typical human heart is made of 4 chambers. So it comprises of 2 upper atrium and 2 lower ventricles. All right, so 2 upper atrium and 2 lower ventricles. Now this upper atrium is further bifurcated into right atrium and left atrium, and the ventricles are divided just like atrium only. They are also divided into right ventricle and left ventricle. All right, so these are the chambers of the heart that are present in case of the human heart. All right, so we will now see their location. So let's just bring this model in the center of the screen, and we'll just label the part. So you can see this part, this one, being represented as the atrium part, this one. All right, so these are the upper chambers which you can see. I'll just show you in detail. This is considered to be as right atrium, and this one is the left atrium. I'll just slice it out, the other valves, in order to make the model more clear. Now it is more clear. So these are the 2 upper chambers which we can see, and this one, these are the lower chambers. So just next to the right atrium lies the right ventricle, and next to the left atrium lies the left ventricle. All right, so this is the location of the chambers of the heart and their respective names. Now we will talk about the walls that separates these chambers. All right, now see, so as there are basically 3 types of walls, or specifically we can say 3 types of septum present in the human heart. All right, so we will just write down the thing first. So all the content of this entire video has been provided in the description section of the video link. So you can go and go through this, and can also go through the quiz section as well. So basically there are 3 septum present in human heart. So there are 3 septum present. So the first one is called as interatrial septum. interatrial septum. Now, as the word is suggesting, interatrial septum, so this septum is present between the two atrium, that means the right atrium and the left atrium. So this is a thin wall-like structure you can see over here, this one. So this is a thin wall that is going to separate the right atrium from the left atrium. All right, so it is thin walled. So thin walled and separates right atrium and left atrium. Alright, so this is the first septum, first wall. Now why it is thin walled? Since it has to pump blood to the very next ventricle over here, like this. So since it has to pump blood to the very next ventricle, that's why it is thin walled. Alright, so this is the right atrium and this is the left atrium. Alright, this is the case. The second category of septum is interventricular septum. Interventricular septum. Now this septum is thick walled. The peculiarity of this septum is that it is thick walled and they are usually present between the two ventricles. That means the separating the right ventricle with the left ventricle. So this is the interventricular septum that separates the right ventricle with the left ventricle. This one. Alright, so separates. And why it is thick walled? It is thick walled because it has to pump blood to different parts of the body and to farthest points in the body. So since ventricle receives blood from the atrium, but ventricles have to pump blood to the different parts of body, that's why the pressure is very high in case of the blood vessels that emerges out from the ventricles, and that's why they have to be thick walled. So separates right ventricle with left ventricle. Alright, so this is the second septum. Now, the third important septum is the atrioventricular septum. Now, we will see that part as well. So, the third septum is atrioventricular septum. Now, this septum is responsible, as the word is suggesting, atrium and ventricle. So this will separate both the atrium with that of the ventricles. So this separates atrium from the ventricles. And atrium means both left and right atrium. Alright, so this is the third septum. Alright, so we have seen the chambers of the heart, alright, consisting of the right atrium, then left atrium, then right ventricle and left ventricle. Alright, these are the chambers, then the septum which is found in them and their labeling part as well. Alright, further moving forward, we will be dealing with the blood vessels that are found in the human heart. So as you can see in the model, shows the presence of blood vessels in the heart. So we will be talking about all the different types of blood vessels that are present in the human heart, the blood vessels that enters the heart, the blood vessels that leaves the heart, categorically and one by one. All right, so we will first talk about the blood vessels that enters the heart. Okay, so let's start with the blood vessels description part first. Blood vessels entering heart. So in case of the blood vessels that enters the heart, there are two categories. There are two chambers, that means the right atrium and the left atrium. That includes the blood vessels in which the blood vessel will enter into the heart. So this will involve two further categories. That means in case of right atrium and in case of left atrium. Alright, so we'll just make this model into a static one first, like this. Alright, now in case of this right atrium, there are two blood vessels that enters the heart. So the first one is called as superior vena cava, and the second one is called inferior vena cava. Inferior vena cava. Alright, now this superior vena cava brings deoxygenated blood from the upper parts of body. So brings deoxygenated blood from upper parts of body. While on the other hand, this inferior vena cava will bring deoxygenated blood from lower parts of body. So upper parts of body will include the head, chest and the arms part, while the lower parts of body will include the abdomen, abdominal areas and the legs part from the lower parts of body. And mind one thing, that both these vena cava, they are carrying the deoxygenated blood. Alright, while in case of the left atrium, so this left atrium basically receives 4 pulmonary veins. So this receives 4 pulmonary veins, and since these are pulmonary, so they will be coming from lungs and they will be bringing the oxygenated blood. So these pulmonary veins, it will bring oxygenated blood. So this brings oxygenated blood. Alright, so these are the blood vessels that enters the heart. Alright, now we will see in the model that where are these blood vessels localized. So we'll just bring the model in the center and just move a little bit like this. Yeah, so this one which you can see is representing the superior vena cava. So this is the blood vessel. You can see that this is entering into the right atrium part. Alright, and both, this is the inferior vena cava. This is the inferior vena cava. So both of these blood vessels, they are entering into the respective right atrium. Alright, so the only difference is that the superior vena cava will bring deoxygenated blood from the anterior parts of the body, that means upper parts, and the inferior vena cava will bring the deoxygenated blood from the lower parts of body. Alright, this is the case. Now, when we tilt the model a little bit more, like here, this one, like this. Alright, and let me just isolate just a second, like this one. So these two which you can see, these are representing the pulmonary veins. Alright, so there are basically 4 pulmonary veins, and this one is the left atrium. So left atrium receives 4 pulmonary veins and 2 coming from each lungs. So pulmonary veins, and these are also pulmonary veins. And the functions we have already known that this is going to, since this is coming from the lungs, so it will bring the oxygenated blood into the heart. So these are pulmonary veins. All right. So this is the case. Now, so we have dealt with the blood vessels that enters the heart. Now, what about the blood vessels that leaves the heart? So blood vessels leaving the heart. In case of the blood vessels leaving the heart, there are two categories, or there are two blood vessels. All right. So the first one is pulmonary artery. And this pulmonary artery, this arises from the right ventricle. All right. So arises from right ventricle and carries deoxygenated blood. All right. So this will carry deoxygenated blood to where? To the lungs for oxygenation purpose. So this one is the pulmonary artery. So first one is the blood vessel that leaves the heart, and that it will arise from the right ventricle. Now the second is the aorta. Now this aorta, this arises from the left ventricle. So arises from left ventricle and carries oxygenated blood. So this will carry oxygenated blood and will supply to all parts of body. To supply to all parts of body. All right. So these are the two blood vessels that will leave the heart. So we will now see in the model that where they are localized. So we'll just keep it in the center like this. Move a model a little bit like here, like this. Just tilt it like this. All right. Now, so we can see that this is the pulmonary artery. And this pulmonary artery is arising from the right ventricle. Right ventricle. All right. This one. And this is the aorta, which is arising from the left ventricle like this. So this will go into this like this. All right. So this is their localization. All right. We have already discussed about the chambers, then about the blood vessels that are found in the heart. So in this last part of the video, we will be talking about the valves that are present in the human heart. All right. So we'll first write down the description that what are the types of valves, then what is their function, and what are their location as well, and then we will exactly figure out that what are the positions or localizations in the model itself. So let's start. So basically, valves, if we talk about valves in human heart. All right. So basically there are 4 types of valves found in human heart. So 4 types. All right. That are found in case of human heart. And these valves, the function of these valves is to regulate the flow of blood in single direction. So if we look into their function, all right, so if we talk about their functions, then the functions of these valves is to regulate blood flow in one direction. One direction means the blood flow will be from atrium towards the ventricles. So that is from atria to ventricles. All right. And the second important function is that they are also responsible for preventing the backflow of blood from ventricles to atrium. So they also prevent the backflow of blood. So to prevent backflow of blood from ventricles to atria. All right, so this is about the valves and about the functions of the valve that we have seen. Now we will see the 4 different categories of valves that are found in case of human heart. All right, now we'll just bring this model a little bit over here and we'll slice out these figures. Since I've already told you that there are 4 types of valve, so this one is representing the first category and that is called tricuspid valve. So this is tricuspid valve. So this is the first valve. Then this one is called bicuspid valve. So this is bicuspid valve, which is also called mitral valve. So this is also called as mitral valve. Now the third valve is called pulmonary semilunar valve. So this is pulmonary semilunar valve. And the fourth one is aortic semilunar valve. Aortic semilunar valve. So these are the 4 valves. Now this bicuspid valve is also known as right atrioventricular valve. So this is also called right atrioventricular valve. Why this is called right atrioventricular valve? Because this valve is located at the junction between the right atrium and the right ventricle. And we will see this in the model as well. And this bicuspid valve is also called as left atrioventricular valve. Atrioventricular valve. All right. Now we will see their location, their exact position and location in the human heart. So this one, we know that this is tricuspid valve. So as discussed earlier, that this tricuspid valve is located at the junction between the right atrium and the right ventricle. So this one is the right atrium and this one is the right ventricle. Right ventricle. All right, so it is actually located at their junction. All right, so it will regulate the flow of blood from atrium to ventricles, right atrium to right ventricle. So located between right atrium and right ventricle. Alright, this is their position. Now, one thing which is very important in case of these valves is that these valves, they play a very, they are held together in their position with the help of cords like structures. All right, now they have been given this name tricuspid and bicuspid. The reason being is that tricuspid is made of 3 muscular flaps and bicuspid is made of 2 muscular flaps. The entire details and the entire content part is provided in the description section of the video link, so you people can go through it. Now, so as I already told you that this portion is called chordae tendineae. Now, the function of chordae tendineae is to keep the tricuspid and bicuspid valve to be held together intact in their position. So these are called chordae tendineae. While on the other hand, you can see that some muscles arising from the ventricular walls. So these muscles are called papillary muscles. So papillary muscles are the muscles which helps the chordae tendineae to keep the bicuspid and the tricuspid valves to be held together in their position. All right, so this is the important thing, and this is present both in case of this bicuspid. We can see that this is present both in case of this bicuspid and the tricuspid valves. All right, now we will see the location of the pulmonary semilunar valve. So we'll just tilt a figure a little bit like this. Pulmonary semilunar valve is actually located at the opening of the right ventricle into pulmonary artery. So this is the pulmonary semilunar valve. All right, now this pulmonary semilunar valve, you can see that this is basically present at the opening of the right ventricle over here. All right, so present at opening of right ventricle, and this opening will ultimately open into pulmonary artery. So into pulmonary artery. All right, so they are basically pocket shaped. All right, so if we move the figure a little bit, see, so the beating process shows that they are basically pocket shaped and they are 3 in number like this. See, so these valves, this pulmonary semilunar valve, pulmonary semilunar valve is 3 in number and pocket shaped. All right, this is the case. Now, the last category of valve is the aortic semilunar valve. So this, you can see over here, this represents the aortic semilunar valve. Now this aortic semilunar valve, this is located at the opening of left ventricle here, like this. So located at opening of left ventricle, and this opening will open into aorta. So into aorta. So these are also pocket shaped and 3 in number. So they are 3 in number. All right. So this is about the valves, their structure, location and function. All right. Thank you.